Hey girl, hey, my name is Tina DeFord. I am going to be going live with Deb Fusick of Ever Parent Coaching. We're going to be talking about compassion as a superpower. Compassion is so much more than just being nice, and it's actually a really great component to not just being a great business owner, but also being a great human being. So please feel free to share a little intro of yourself in the chat. We're going to give the wonderful Deb a moment to join us. I'm going to go ahead and loop her, and we're going to get this party going. We also want to hear any questions you have. The better we can customize this conversation for you, the more fun we're going to have, the more fun you're going to have. Hi, Deb. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Doing great. So happy to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So welcome to everyone tuning in. We're happy to have you. Deb, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us what Ever Parent Coaching is.
Yes, I am Deb Fusick, and I am in St. Pete. I started Ever Parent Coaching about a year ago to help parents facing parenting challenges, big parenting challenges. Some of the things that I specialize in are working with parents of kids who are diagnosed with ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder. I also work with parents of kids that have been through traumas or who are adopted. So those are kind of my main niches. So I love working with moms like that. Mostly I got into that realm because I'm a mom that's experienced all of those things with my kids. So that's how I got here.
And what a wonderful place to be. You do so much great work for the families that you work with. We have such a nice comment from Kira. Kira says, Deb, so good to see you. It's been a few years since Bridgepoint.
Yes, I remember you.
Excuse me. So sweet. Thank you for your sweet comment, Kira, and thanks for being here. So if you haven't already, share an intro in the chat. We'd love to know a little bit about you, get to know each other. So I have a question for you, Deb. So what do you mean when you say compassion is a superhero?
Well,
Superpower.
power. Well, with compassion, it's really at its essence a form of love. So if you look at the opposite, you're in a place of perfection or judgment, just the things we don't like, the things that get heavy on our chest and weigh us down in our own mind and for about ourselves. And it also really is a very negative place to be in our relationships. So when we flip that and have compassion on ourselves and come into our relationships with a place of being gentle on ourselves, to be kind on ourselves, guess what? It's a lot easier to have compassion for other people, because when we feel like we have to be perfect, sometimes we end up putting that on everyone else. So you can really change a room by coming in, putting on your compassion cape, and coming in to save the day with just letting people make mistakes, letting people try and fail. Nobody is perfect. And whether it's your kids or your partner or your coworker, your employees, nobody is perfect. And if you're playing hard, you're going to fall on your face sometimes. So you want to make that okay, because it really empowers other people all the more. It makes the day-to-day a lot more positive, and it also is going to bring out more productivity in anyone you're working with, from your child that you feel like you can't get them to do the slightest thing, all the way to employees and even friends. If people feel like they can't make any mistakes around you, they start to just generally cover up things, because nobody's perfect. So people will go underground, they'll try to sidestep you, go around you. So take out that cape and use your superpower, which is full of love and grace for other people.
That is so wonderful. And I love that you said compassion cape. I mean, A, because of the alliteration of the two C's, but also because, it's a real skill to have, and it's a real thing that we can deploy whenever needed, both for ourselves and for others. So I want to put you on the spot a little bit, Deb. Do you have any examples you can think of when compassion really saved the day? Like whether it be for you or, you bringing it to the table for some of your clients. I'm sure you have some really fab stories.
Yeah, I mean, like with my kids, I've been a mom for 27 years almost, I guess, since my son is going to be 27 in December. I've been at this for a while, and I have seen so many times the difference between just kind of bossing my kids around, go and, pick up your room, do this, do that, and a big long list. There's a big difference between that and coming in and saying, hey, how was your day today? How are things going for you? What's going on? And just listening a little bit and kind of checking in. How are things? We've got to get this room taken care of. When do you think you could do it? Can you do it in like 10 minutes? Can you do it in an hour? Just kind of working with your child. So, I mean, I feel like I still have this with my youngest son at home, who's 17. And, when I can come in and say, hey, this is what we need to take care of today. How are you doing? How can we get there? Rather than just bossing around, it goes a long way in making a big difference for him to be able to do it. And it builds our relationship. It leaves us feeling more connected with each other instead of like we just want to escape each other.
That is such a great example. Excuse me, with, cleaning a room, or anything around the house, really. I mean, of course, we could say, you need to clean your room and you need to get it done right now. Or, providing some kind of structure of like, hey, can you do it within the next hour? I mean, that's a pretty achievable ask. So that's such a great way to frame that.
Yeah, sometimes we just kind of expect people to hop to, from our kids all the way to our coworkers, our friends, and sometimes people just need a little breathing room so that they can do whatever needs to be done.
Yes. And speaking of breathing room, I mean, sometimes there is something going on that we're just not aware of, but we won't know unless we ask. Where people are not always great at communicating obstacles they're facing, or if they're just feeling overwhelmed. So it's so nice to be able to check in, like whether it's a coworker or a close family member.
It goes a long way because, when you realize that somebody that you care about is going through something, and you realize that you just kind of blasted through and expected a whole list of things to be done, it feels pretty bad when you realize that you just kind of bulldozed over them. So, having compassion, looking out for the needs of other people before you make your request, really can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And Deb, I mean, to your point about, we're talking about there are all different kinds of groups of people, whether it's our kids at home, friends, coworkers, we're all different and we move through this world differently. So something that might come really easily to you, Deb, might be really hard for me, or might be really hard for one of your children, or vice versa. But we won't know unless we ask and touch base on that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I want to share this comment that we just got from Leah of LMG Creative. She says, love this. It's all about the connection. She has a young child as well.
Yes, it is all about the connection. I feel like as a parent coach, I'm constantly saying that it's all about the connection first, because it's very hard to build anything on top of that if you don't have the connection first. It's hard to ask for something to be done and actually see it happen. And you can't teach very well to somebody that isn't open-hearted to you when you're talking and teaching. So
Yes, it's building that bridge. You know, if someone feels like they're not going to be heard or they're not going to be listened to, like then they're not going to bring the issues or challenges to the table. So that is so helpful to remind ourselves. And I want to ask all the wonderful folks that are tuning in. So if you haven't already shared an intro, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Also, some of you have children, some of you have businesses, some of you have both. If you have any questions about how you can better connect with, you know, a specific person or specific group using compassion, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and I'll make sure that that it gets in front of Deb.
Yes. Yes.
Stephanie says of Casaria Design, definitely learning to be so empathetic, especially with a spouse that can easily push our buttons.
Yes. All of this goes for spouses, 100%. We don't really like it when our spouse or partner comes at us in an uncompassionate way where they're just really abrupt and kind of pushing. We don't like it. And so the more we can start to do that, to show compassion to our partner when we see that they're stressed and maybe not at their best and how they're treating us, to say, hey, I see you've had a tough day. Is there something I can do to help you out? Or how can we make this go easy? You seem like, you know, I see you really stressed out right now. What would make this go easier for you? And if, you know, you're just kind of having one of those really yucky moments where your partner maybe is yelling at you, kind of telling you off, it's just a bad scene, just giving them some space and then coming back around when things are calm to say, hey, you know, that hurt me when you talked to me that way. What could we do in the future when you're stressed out or we're both stressed out, so that we don't end up hurting each other? Come at it like as a team. How can we work together? So ask your partner or spouse, what do you need in those moments? And sometimes by learning what they need, you can really help to lower those triggers and to have them not be tripping quite as much.
Yes. Excuse me. And, you know, I mean, from a standpoint of compassion in our businesses, you know, being a leader is not about, you know, bossing everybody around and, you know, being the one that says, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to do it. It's also about listening to what your team needs and bringing that to the table so that they can best serve the company and execute these tasks in the way that you've asked them to. So it's also being a good listener and being really supportive.
Yes. Listening is a huge piece of compassion, because then you're hearing what their heart is. You're hearing what is going on. What are they afraid of, angry about, sad about? You find out when you listen.
Absolutely. And Kira says it's a good reminder that even though we're doing a lot and stressed and need help, it's possible our partner's feeling the same way. So being aware of what both people need is helpful.
Yes, definitely. 100%.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kira. Okay, I've got another question for you, Deb.
Okay.
So how does compassion affect the brain when in fight, flight, or freeze mode?
Well, in fight, flight, or freeze mode, but right before fight, flight, or freeze mode, when you get triggered, upset, something is going wrong in your world. What happens is the amygdala is in your brain and it sends off an alarm. And what happens is you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, which means you go back here to caveman brain. You're in fight, flight, or freeze. And what's interesting is this whole frontal lobe section, this whole logic, reasoning, creativity, problem solving, it goes completely offline. That's like such a bummer. But have you noticed how when we get into arguments that are really heated, we get kind of, you know, we're not very smart anymore. Our verbalizing isn't as strong. We can't think things through. We can't logic. We're just kind of like nowhere near. We're kind of more caveman than our full true selves. And so that's because this part of the brain is offline. So you're in fight, flight, or freeze, which is a very scary place to be because you're just in fear mode, ready to shut down, to run, to fight. So with compassion, the really interesting thing is that compassion and empathy are like a healing oil to just come down over your brain and soothe. It'll come down over your brain. It'll come down over your child's brain. Compassion will rain down over your partner's brain and soothe, over your coworker's brain and soothe. It's incredible. So when you see somebody really revved up and they're just kind of in freak out mode, compassion, empathy, coming in very calmly, really gentle, really just no judgment. It's amazing how much that has been actually scientifically proven to just calm down the brain, bring the amygdala to shut back down and calm down from that alert, turn off the alert. And then this part of the brain comes back online. We can think, we can reason, we can problem solve again. The world is going to be okay again, instead of feeling like 5-alarm fire going off. So it's really a very powerful tool to use for yourself to come back to calm, and to use for those around you.
That is so, it's so helpful that we have like the antidote, to that fear, because fight or flight or freeze, I mean, that's us trying to protect ourselves from something that our brain is interpreting as danger.
Right.
So that's so nice that we have that, we have something we can do about it, which is showing compassion for ourselves and others.
Right.
And so what does that look like? Like, what are some like really specific examples of how we can show compassion for those around us and ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it starts with ourselves, because our well is filled up to be able to do that for others. The more we can do it for ourselves. So self-compassion really is helpful. It really can build self-compassion when you talk to yourself like a trusted friend. Like if, Gina, you were telling me about a really hard situation, I would be just so kind and sweet, and I know you would be the same to me. But how do we talk inside of our own heads when, we've missed a deadline, or somebody is upset about something we've done or haven't done? We tend to just talk to ourselves in a really rough way. We tend to beat ourselves up. It's kind of the default, just going in hard on ourselves. So if we can start to be more aware of what is our self-talk, how do we talk to ourselves? Can I start talking to myself like I do to everybody else when they're going through a really hard time, when I care about other people? How do I talk? How can I talk that way to myself? So that is a very good place to start. Also, self-compassion means taking care of your body, comforting your body, not running yourself till you are completely dry and spent, not grinding and grinding when you're just flat out exhausted, hungry, thirsty. It's like, yes, take time to get a drink of water, to keep eating, to get the rest that you need. It's very hard to function without these basics, but we tend to push the envelope on things, especially like sleeping, just thinking we don't have to do it. So when we can take care of our body throughout the day, to just give it that ease, that rest. Maybe if you've had something really stressful and you can just kind of close your eyes for even 5 minutes and just kind of reset, it can really help. Also, starting to be more aware of your feelings on things, starting to journal or talk to a trusted friend, starting to figure out where are some of the big feelings you're having coming from, and start to process that. People often benefit from therapy or coaching. So that can be also a really healthy part of self-compassion. And giving yourself time to do things that you really enjoy, that fill up your tank, because you want that for those around you. So you definitely need it for yourself. And it's okay to get support. We need support. We are not designed to be just isolated humans in our little boxes with our doors opening and closing and garage doors just closing everybody out. So we definitely need to let other people into our lives so that we have support around us. So as far as other people, um, sometimes we've got to give people a break, you know.
Mm.
If you see somebody going through something hard, you need to talk to them. Start with the basics with them. Have you had anything to eat or drink lately? Because guess what? It's really hard to work through problem solving when everybody's starving and dehydrated. Sometimes people kind of take that for granted. We've got to start with, let's get the blood sugar up. Let's start to process, get some basics in place, and let people make mistakes. Like we were talking about at the beginning, if you're playing hard, you're going to make mistakes. So
Mhm.
when you have people around you doing life, trying, your kids are trying to mature and grow, your partner, your spouse is trying to go out there and figure out life and and do this thing of being in this world as well, and it's hard. So we want to be really supportive, be a good listener. Listening is huge. If there's nothing else you remember from this lunch and learn, listening, just giving people the space to open up, to speak out. Try to avoid the buts. Yeah, but no, they're saying how they feel, so you don't get to put your butts in it. so so let them just express and listen, and let it be okay for them to share whatever it is they need to share.
That is so wonderful, Deb. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I mean, for hearing you share some of these tangible ways to practice more compassion, starting with ourselves, is such a great reminder, because if we are taken care of, if we're in a good place, then we can actually support others. You
Yeah,
know, like we can't fill someone else's cup and support them and get them what they need and show up for them if our cup is bone dry.
right. It does not work. That is a no-go. So you feel,
Yes.
I can't do this. I can't be empathetic and compassionate and sit around and listen to these people. That mode where you're like, I can't do this for these people. All of a sudden, people become, it's like, okay, take an inventory, take a break, find a way that works for you to recharge, to refill. Because if you get in the mode where you're like, I just can't do that for the people around me, then it's time to start with self-compassion. That's your first focus. So I have a great book recommendation for anyone that would like to read more on this topic. If you're like, gosh, I just really struggle with self-compassion. Like, this sounds good, Deb, but man, I mean, this is hard for me. I really recommend the book Self-Compassion by Dr. Kristen Neff. She has also written many articles on the topic of self-compassion. So if you're finding you'd like to do a deeper dive on this topic, I would wholeheartedly recommend that book. Something else she also talks about is growing in mindfulness, being in the moment, because to be a good listener, to be compassionate, we really do have to be in the moment. Because if your mind is chasing down the 15 things you need to do next, the thing that you were frustrated about back here this morning, if you're in the past and you're in the future, you're not in the present. And people can tell when you are not in the present. You just won't show up authentically if your mind is all over the place. So it's definitely worth taking some time to ground yourself in prayer, ground yourself in meditation, stillness. It can be really hard for some of us. I know it's hard for me to sit still, but we need that stillness. For me in practice, I get up, I have my coffee, I go outside, and I have that time of stillness, of prayer outside to just start my day, because we all need it. We all need a reset.
Absolutely. And to those people, I mean, you have mentioned that that's hard for you sometimes to be still. It's hard for me to be still sometimes. I mean, eventually, if you practice it, it starts to feel really nice.
Yeah,
We gain so much from being still and, getting ourselves grounded and being present. So then we can say, okay, now I can deal with these folk.
right, right.
Yeah. And by
Yeah,
deal with, I mean, show up for.
right. Show up for it.
Mm-hmm.
The default mode is deal with these people, and the compassionate, loving mode is showing up for that individual, that person, thinking of the heart and soul within all the people you're touching, even if you're touching a big group, thinking of them as individuals that need compassion.
Absolutely. And Deb, I'd love to ask you, so one more question before I ask you to tell us a little bit more about how we can learn more about working with you and where to find you. So you touched base a little bit about showing compassion for yourself and showing compassion for your kids. How about in your business? How does compassion manifest for you at Everparent?
Oh, it has been a huge thing in the last year, as I have launched and gotten my practice up and running. Of course, perfection has wanted to just take over, and it has been a journey to keep it at bay, to realize things don't have to be perfect. It's better to be out there working with people, connecting with people. It's not about having everything perfect. If I have, and to let it walk away. So I've done a lot of work this year around, which is how I ended up reading that book, around self-compassion and letting go of that spirit of perfection, because it can be a really tough way to live when you hold yourself to this really high extreme of having to be perfect, and nobody can ever match that. We're never perfect. So just letting go of it, letting it be okay if something doesn't go the way that I want it to go. If, I put something out there and it's not really received well, let it not be about me. It's like, okay, I tried that, and it's not that I'm not, great at what I do because somebody wasn't into my reel or whatever. Like, big deal. So to be more playful about it, to realize that, like, this is an experiment. I mean, as an entrepreneur, there is so much experimentation in the marketing and how you reach people. And, we all have our thing that we do. For me, it's supporting parents, coaching parents. That's my expertise. But all of this other marketing and business stuff, it's an experiment, and it's something that you try, and sometimes it doesn't go how you want, and other times it goes great. So letting it be okay to play, to try. And I've had to just realize that how things are going in different measures is not a measure of me. So when things are going great, it doesn't make me any better. And if they're not going as well, it doesn't make me any less of a person. So that has been a big takeaway that I have kind of grown through and gone through this year.
That is wonderful. Oh my gosh. So I know that you said earlier, that it would be so great for everyone to take away the lesson that, work on being a better listener. But also, let's add one more to that list.
Okay.
Compassion over perfection. Carry that with you, everybody.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
such a good message, Deb.
Shed that perfection, because it doesn't have anything good for you. It just wants to be like a big leech sucking you dry. So that
Absolutely.
builds you up. Perfection just drains you.
Yes, and compassion builds us up.
Mm-hmm. It really does.
That is wonderful. So tell us, where can we learn more about you? How can we work with you?
Yes, I am on Instagram and Facebook, Everparent Coaching. and I have a website, everparentcoaching.com. And I love to work with people all over the nation. I'm available via Google Meet to work with my clients. So if you are a parent and you could really use some support, I'm here to help. And if you know of someone that may or may not even be in the Tampa Bay area, I'm able to help families outside of this area as well. So yeah, definitely check out everparentcoaching.com. And you can also find out more about my Facebook group on there that is designed to help parents of kids with different disabilities such as autism, ADHD, and sensory processing disorder.
Thank you so, so much, Deb. You're a rock star. Thank you for sharing about the compassion cape with us. Cheers to all of us being able to put it on for ourselves and others. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Same time next week? Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll just be watching instead of talking.
Fair enough. Yeah, we'll share the microphone. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone that tuned in. Thanks for being here. Follow Deb on Instagram. Don't be shy about sending her a DM, and cheers to more compassion for one another. All right. Thank you, Deb.
Bye.